I was running my errands and doing everything that I needed to do, I noticed something. I noticed that a lot of people are ashamed, either ashamed of their job, and it didn't bother me. But God put a word on my heart, and it was about being unashamed. So yesterday I had to go, well, I didn't have to go, but I went to go get a massage. That's something that I always do leading up to the event. I always get at least 2 to 3 massages, usually two leading up and then one in between. And because it's a lot on my body. Now I have to fly and
Miss
all of that
Curlin,
stuff.
salute.
So I got to fly there and stand on heels for 16 hours and fly back. Now that is by choice because they look good. I love them. And they're not uncomfortable, but I just have to make sure I take care of my body. So I scheduled a massage, and this young lady who was very sweet, but she was heavy handed. Oh my gosh. Very sweet, and she was talking to me during the massage, which I'm not a big fan of because I want to relax, but I felt like she needed an ear, so I just took my headphones out and opened up my ears to hear whatever it was that she needed to talk about. And she began to tell me this story about a situation that she was in a couple years ago. It was her
What's going on?
ex-boyfriend who was an addict, and she ended up having to help raise his son. Now, there was a long story. I don't want to get into the story now, but one of the things that she kept saying as she was explaining the story to me, and even when she wasn't saying it, I could feel it,
Jada LaRue,
is
what's
that she
going
was
on?
so ashamed of having to go through that, of having to deal with this man and sharing this story. It was a shame. She didn't feel good about it. It wasn't a story that she she was proud of. So then it happened again. Yesterday, I was ended up being at a car dealership all night. Not all night, but I was there for a minute. And one of the young men that took me, that I was talking to, didn't take me anywhere, but I was talking to him. He began to tell me about his experience in the military and how he was ashamed of some of his behavior. And it got me to thinking. God laid a word on my heart about being unashamed.
What's up,
And here's the
Queen?
last thing. The other day, someone was, I don't know if it was a comment or somewhere that I saw, but it was about faith and not being afraid to say that you are a Christian or that you're a believer, that you are whatever you are. And so I wanted to share a word about being ashamed. Just like I said to this young lady and this young man, you don't need to be ashamed of your past, because your past is your story, and your story is going to help someone somewhere. You may not even know it. You may never know it. You may never even see that individual again. But your story, your experiences are used. You first of all, you go through them for a reason, and when you share them with other people, they're used to be a blessing to other people, for other people to learn what not to do, or for other people to understand that, listen, I'm not here by myself, somebody else has been through this too. So there's no reason to be ashamed of anything that you've done. Yeah, we're human and we're going to feel that way, and we're not going to be always proud of everything that we do. Heck, I ain't proud of everything that I've done, but I understand that now, because hindsight is 2020, when I'm sitting there in my seminars and I'm sharing some of the most intricate details of my life and what I've been through and some of the things that I've experienced, is helping someone. I'll give
Said
you
I'm
an
buffering.
example. I had a young man. There's a portion in the seminar where I talk a lot about sharing your story, the importance of sharing your story. And so one year I brought in this guy, and I had met him. I didn't speak to him a lot at the event until like close to the end. And we ended up going to dinner with a group of some of the other attendees of this particular event. And we were just talking and sharing, and he ended up sharing his story. And I had to drop my fork, and my mouth like a professional. He looked like maybe he could be a real estate agent or even a doctor or something like that. This man's an ex-con. He had served a 2-year prison. asked him, I said, if you're looking to share your story, I would be more than happy to give you the platform to do it at my event. So I gave him about 30 to 45 minutes to share his story at the event, but no one knew who he was. No one had ever seen him before. They looked at the cover, they looked at the man. Now, let me a little bit, because being a gangbanger, being in prison, but he wasn't. He came there and he shared his story. There was not a dry eye in the room. But something more amazing happened. The young ladies close to the end had to get up and walk out. I found out later that she had been through the same thing. She had a rough life. She had served time in jail. She had been through almost the same thing that he had been through. And I would have never known. I've seen this young lady several times, the barbershop that Kel and Ricky, my husband and son, used to get their hair cut at. I would have never known. So you don't know who that situation, who your story, why you went through that. Yes, you learned something, but it's also for someone else to learn too. Same thing with faith. Don't be ashamed of your faith. If God has called you to do something, he's called you into ministry, don't be ashamed of that. Own it. I own it. I own it. I love God. I love ministry. I love ministering. I love what I do. I'm very excited about my faith. If you can't tell, you had several videos posted on my channel of Melvin and I talking about God and talking about how we mix God and business. And I'm not ashamed of that. In fact, someone asked if I preach at all of my seminars. I don't call it preaching. And my seminars are not all about God. My seminars are about practical business practices. But when it comes time for me to give glory and honor to the Most High, to God, I do. And I'm not ashamed to do that. Because without God, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be able to stand up and do those seminars.
Another content creator, they were talking about telling your story before your enemies do. Ladies, stop letting people make you feel ashamed about the things that you've went through. I've never met a perfect person. I've been in rooms with generals. I've been in rooms. Your past is what makes you. Your past is what defines you. It what creates the character that you hold now dear and near to your heart. I want everyone to understand that. Stop letting people use your past against you. Stop letting your enemies tell your story. Tell your own story. Be proud of where you come from. Be proud of who you are. Because here's the thought process, right? Normally, people who are worried about your past, 9 times out of 10, there's a level of jealousy. There's a secret level of discontentment with themselves. Because if you understand that, hey, listen, I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. So for some, you were homeless. You were in shelters. You were, on drugs. You was on alcohol. I find that to be very tacky, but I find that normally when people try to tell your story, they get it wrong. They only talk about the trial and tribulation, but they never bring up the triumph. They never bring up the exciting part of you getting over and through and around your trial and tribulation. For some reason, they forget the courage part. They forget the time and the energy that it took for you to be who you are today. They always mention how long you cried. They always mention how long you bled out and what you didn't have and how how this happened and that happened. But they never mention the courage that you had to get over the bullshit that you went through. So my thing is, if you're gonna tell the story, tell the whole story. Don't leave out the part where I triumphed. Don't leave out the part where I took the next step even though I failed. Don't leave out the fact that shit, if my credit score was 459 and right now it's a 765, don't leave out what it took for me to reach that goal. I find that for some reason you don't want to talk about my accolades. You don't want to talk about what it took for me to reach betterment. What you want to do is you want to focus on the negative. You want me to be reminded that I was a victim of something. You want me to be reminded that I did not have something. You don't want to say or remind me that you are a champion. And I notice that there are a lot of people always reminding people you are a victim of something. How dare you try to live your best life? How dare you try to say, let me start a new relationship. Let me become an entrepreneur. Let me start traveling. Let me fix my credit. How dare you? They always want to keep for some reason, keep you in the dark, keep you sad, keep you trying to figure out, your next move. But they never, what I never see them offer you help. I never see them offer you help. I notice that there's a lot of people who scream and holler, well, let me expose. Well, normally you're exposing someone's past. But I never hear anyone say, well, let me help you. Not expose you. Let me help you. I never see anybody go out their way to do that. I never see anybody do research so you can become a homeowner. God damn, I'm hitting some. Woo! I never see them do research so you can fix your credit. I never see them research so you can be a better parent. I never see them research so that way you can learn your love languages. Like, I never see them do any research to help you, but I always see them do research to hinder you. How many people understand that? Tell your story before your enemies tell the story, because they're only going to tell the parts that make you look bad. They're not going to tell the parts that say, you know what? Yeah, you've been through some shit, but you didn't stay in that shit. You crawled through some shit, but for some type of way, you're now standing up and saying, hey, that shit that I went through, I don't forget. Here's so funny. I don't think people forget their hardship. Forget they've been abused, they've been disrespected, they went without, they sacrificed the tears, the pain, the heartache, the stress, the drama, the anxiety. They don't forget that. So how dare you try to remind them, oh, let me remind you. Well, they had a front, the Wi-Fi was working on that bullshit. It was clear. They saw it, they breathed it, they taste that anxiety. So imagine a motherfucker trying to remind you of something you already know. Something that you lived through. Tell your story before your enemy that now you're a champion. Today you're a champion. Today you good. Yeah, that was yesterday. That was the day before. That was last week. That was last month. That was last year. That was 5 years ago. You want to remind me of some shit I already went through? Well, I ran that race. I've already ran that race. I'm very familiar with how that race went. I'm very familiar with the negativity that was going on then. But what about now? How come my story now is not important? That's like someone coming to a school and speak to children about using drugs or alcohol or whatever. Imagine the whole entire time while they're talking about the present and what presently people should do and presently who they are. Drugs. But you was an alcoholic. I mean, that's more than counterproductive. It's downright rude. People do a great job at trying to remind you of the worst you. Because even as the worst you were better than them. At the worst you were better than them. So they I want to remind you of the bad times. And then here's the even worse part. When they don't have all of the details to how bad things were, they make it up. They fabricate it. Because they have to do something to make sure that your light don't shine as bright. They have to do something to dim your courageousness, to stop your efforts, to stop your motivation, to stop your positivity. They have to do something so that way you are not seen better than them. They got to make up a name for you. They got to talk about your kids, talk about your parents, talk about your relationship, talk about any issues they hear that's going on. They have to bring that to the light because here's the thought process. They're not strong enough to live through their own life. They're not strong enough to reinvent themselves. So what they need to do is condemn everyone else. I noticed that when a lot of people start talking about certain things, just certain things and certain people, I always look at the character of the person speaking. And what exactly are they trying to do? If you sit on social media and your main objective is to tear other people's character down because your character is not sufficient, your character is not trustworthy, your character is not loyal, you are a bad person. And because you are a bad person, what you want to do is disguise it as exposing someone. And really all you're doing is you're exposing yourself. You're exposing who you're not. You're exposing what you can't achieve. And jealousy is a motherfucker. Tell your story before your enemies tell it. Because they're going to rip pages out of a book. They're going to set it on fire. They're going to freeze it. They're going to throw dirt on it. They're going to do all of these things so no one can read the part in the book where you start living your best life. You was in a positive relationship. You explored. You did the things. You started achieving your goals. Those pages are going to be ripped. Only want people to read about the skeletons in the closet, the ghost in the corner. They only want people to know the bad because they're too afraid if someone knows the good, the fact that you are a champion, the fact that you've triumphed, the fact that you went through some shit and you were not knocked down long enough, that you're standing the fuck up and you're telling people, hey, you ain't gotta be a victim for nobody and for nothing. They don't want people to read that part. And I sit back and I watch people on social media. They rip out people's pages. They tear out the pages that identify the true character of a person so that way they can look good. And I'm telling you all, let me be the first fucking content creator to tell you, you don't look good. Because what you didn't understand is the book and the pages that you ripped out, right? You didn't understand that that was just a fucking copy. That there are 1,000 copies out there already and people know the real story. That's what you don't understand. You got one book and you decided to destroy one fucking book and it wasn't good enough. It wasn't strong enough. It wasn't powerful enough. You did everything you could to condemn that person. Say everything you could to bring down that person. And you didn't realize that the book that you was destroying was not the original copy. Tell your story before your enemies tell your story. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Mario J. This is Tough Love. Until next time, tell your story. Peace.